Hello ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else watching. My name's Eric, and welcome back to a brand new video here on the Bioshock Hub. With Netflix and 2K announcing an official Bioshock movie not too long ago, I wanted to take a quick look back at the original pitch for a Bioshock movie that was set to be directed by Gore Verbinski. Today, we'll be taking a look at the original script for the canceled movie and go over some of the more interesting parts of it. Joining me today is the writer of this script, Zedd. If you'd like to follow her, which I would highly recommend, I'll leave her Twitter down in the description. Thank you, Zedd, and sorry this took so long. Before we dive in, however, please keep in mind that this isn't a finalized version of that script. Any or all of these plot beats likely could have been ironed out further or rewritten completely if the film ever reached completion. Now with that disclaimer out of the way, let's take a look back at the original Bioshock movie script. Also, this is going to be a lot longer of a video than I normally upload, so take your time watching it, and I hope you can sit back, relax, and enjoy. The year is 1960. We open on a day people usually remember for the rest of their lives, college graduation. In the audience, rows and rows of students wearing caps and gowns, all beaming with excitement and hope for what the future may bring. All except for one person, who can't even bring himself to fake a smile. Nervously, his eyes dart around the entire stadium until they finally settle on his family. His mother, his Aunt Doreen, and his father, who's filming the event with a 16mm film camera. In this distracted haze, he misses the tossing of the graduation cap. His name is Jack, our protagonist. Cut ahead a few hours later, and Jack's returned home for a graduation party, though unfortunately, he's unable to muster any excitement. He stands by the pool of a quote-unquote perfectly mid-century modern house, becoming increasingly uncomfortable as more and more of his relatives try to talk to him. Jack's eyes glance over to the pool, and at the bottom he swears he catches a glimpse of something shimmering, like a beacon calling out to him. But he's quickly dragged back to reality by his Aunt Doreen, tapping on his shoulder. The next morning, Jack's dad drags him into his workplace, with bright eyes, happily explaining the bright future his son has ahead of him, even mentioning a setup meeting with a Mr. Ryan. It seems like his son's life is essentially decided for him. But to Jack, the workers each look like zombies. Each office looks like a prison cell. A concerning sight is when the duo see a man crying over a series of Scrabble tiles, spelling out, "Would you kindly?" Jack, however, simply sees no future for himself in this place, so he runs away, finding the nearest airport and then purchasing the first available ticket, a flight to Barcelona, Spain. That night, after he boards the plane, he orders himself a nice cup of tea and spends some time alone with his thoughts, though he has kept one thing from his former life under his arm. He cuddles a birthday present from his mother, her voice swirling around in his head, quote, "We hope you find yourself and come home to us soon. Until then, would you kindly open your present?" End quote. For the past few months, it's felt like his world was crumbling down around him. The plane all of a sudden gets caught in a tornado, causing it to plummet down out of the sky like a rock out of the sky. A hellish roar pierces the passengers' ears as the windows break, letting in a torrential flood of water. The plane itself is torn in half, and when Jack once again comes to, he's fighting for his life, trying to break the water's surface. All around him, various bits of rubble float to the bottom of the ocean. The jet's fuel has caused the surface of the ocean to erupt into flame. He swims towards the one actual structure he can see, a lighthouse, blinking off in the distance. He just barely manages to make it to the lighthouse, and even pulls himself onto the lighthouse's ledge. Getting a good look up close, it barely even looks like a lighthouse, closer to a monument or an art piece. But, with a lack of a better option, Jack catches his breath and enters in search of help. The inside is described as, quote, "an Art Deco dreamland." The lights turn on, and he gets a good eyeful of a crimson banner on the wall. No gods or kings, only man. Descending a winding stairwell, he finds a bathysphere covered in rustic teal paint, with an interior similar to that of a grandmother's living room. Against his better judgment, he enters, the door hissing shut behind him. the sphere begins to descend into the deep, dark sea, and he sees his first image of Rapture. Not like he has too long to gawk at the deep blue and the underwater city in front of him, as the television behind him comes to life, playing Andrew Ryan's introduction, word for word from the game. Ryan's pitch is cut off by a staticky, mysterious voice, begging Jack not to listen to any of his social engineering bullshit, coming from a shortwave radio in the sphere. The mysterious voice, with an Irish brogue accent, says he's sending someone soon, and tells us to sit tight. With this, the sphere jerks into the docking station and comes to a stop. Out of the tiny porthole, we see a figure dressed as an engineer approaching, and Jack finally breathes a sigh of relief. He hits a button to depressurize the sphere, but as that happens, he spots another figure sneaking up behind his apparent savior. While we can't see the specifics of what's occurring, the splash of blood covering our window to the world gives us a pretty good idea. Although Jack tries to stop it, the door still opens, though the engineer's corpse is gone. In his place, a large pool of blood remains. The aftermath of whatever attacked the engineer also made the bathysphere inoperable, so Jack cautiously ventures out into Rapture, even though he calls out and gets no response whatsoever. Amongst the various industrial sounds of Rapture, the song "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" by the Ink Spots can be faintly heard. While the dock was clean, idealistically, near utopian, the further he walks, the dirtier it gets. From what he can see through the windows, various neon signs advertise goods of every type. But the most concerning is a product called plasmids. Eventually, he finds the source of the music, a record player emanating from the Fort Frolic nightclub. Once a swanky and upscale nightclub, now completely lays abandoned. Banners advertise a New Year's Eve party for 1958, and various trays of food overrun with cockroaches and flies are on the floor. In the corner of the club lay a man in a tuxedo, but as Jack approaches, it's clear that this man has been dead for a very long time. On the floor in front of him lay various Scrabble tiles, once again spelling out "Would you kindly." Choking down stomach bile, Jack follows another sound, a soft squeak emanating from a lady leaning over an empty carriage. "They took my baby," she whispers. Jack approaches, and as she catches wind, she ominously whispers, "You're wet. You're going to catch your death." This ominous moment is broken up by a hellish screech, a ceiling crawler dropping down, two hooks making mincemeat out of the poor woman. Then, the splicer turns to Jack with bloodlust in her eyes. While he tries to defend himself with a discarded tennis racket, it's all for naught. He's pinned down, closing his eyes and preparing for death's sweet release. Bang! A gunshot rings through the halls, going right through the splicer's gut. The body staggers for a moment before collapsing and revealing Jack's savior, a blue-collared man named Atlas. Though Jack doesn't exactly feel relief. In fact, he's still freaking out, and rightfully so. Quote, "What the fuck? What the fuck was that thing?" he asks, to which Atlas simply replies, "Splicer. There'll be plenty more of them. Let's go." After a little bit of persuasion, mainly the tunnel behind him caving in, Jack agrees to follow. They approach what's described as an eerie simulation of a public park. They then pass by a billboard that says, and I quote, "Would you kindly enjoy Ryan's plasmids? Winter blast. Fire at your fingertips." Let's hope that was just an early typo within the script, because obviously that doesn't make too much sense. Or it seems like everything was mixed up. Atlas describes his plight. His family is trapped within a sub at Neptune's bounty, and he wants Jack to help save them. And in return, they'd all return to the surface together. He's also handed a pistol, which he initially refuses to use. As they walk around, they come across various residents of Ryan's madhouse, including a football player, bride and groom, and a milkman, all quarreling over nothing. As Atlas explains, they're all mad now, half of who they used to be, half crazy for Adam. They'll claw you to pieces if they think you have any, so don't take any chances. Trust me. They soon come upon a long-abandoned Footlight Theater, and its main star, Sander Cohen. He asks Atlas, "Where's my Umber?" Apparently, they had some sort of arrangement beforehand, though, of course, Sander's not hearing any excuses from Atlas, until he catches sight of Jack. Sander, describing his face as divinity, and that he belongs here, eventually saying he'll give their little deadline an extension if the boyo is handed over. But when Jack refuses, Sander rings a little bell, summoning an army of splicers to give chase. That being the football player, the bride and groom, and milkman from earlier, but joined also by a mother, policeman, stage magician, and a minister. Atlas then grabs his gun and shoots Sanders square in the head, and as he does, the room lights up, revealing one of his masterpieces. As the script describes it, the entire ceiling is covered in dead bodies. They've been nailed into place, forming gruesome patterns. Many have been painted and decorated. It's like a grisly Sistine chapel, and there's one empty place, right in the center. Even though the ringmaster has been killed, his henchmen still hone in on our main duo. Without much of a better choice, they run for their lives. While Jack was initially hesitant to use a weapon, when one of the henchmen pins him down and tears his ear off, that's cleared up pretty damn quick. With the tiny amount of remaining strength that they have, they make one last push and manage to barricade themselves within a storage room. It buys them a precious few moments. Jack's completely exhausted. He collapses on the ground, completely resigned to his fate. But Atlas has one more trick up his sleeve, something to put the pep back in the boy's step, a vial full of mysterious blue liquid called Atom. With the aid of a well-timed "would you kindly," Jack is convinced to splice up. Though they have to split up for a minute to try and split up the mob, it works out in the long run. Unlike the game, however, where Adam has the ability to rewrite the genetic code, in the film's script, Adam is just a wonder drug. When Jack once again regains some sense of mental clarity, he finds that he's been surrounded by a mound of dead bodies. Adam caused him to go into almost a blind-like rage, just murdering splicers left and right. When he runs out of ammo, he resorts to an old trusty pipe wrench. Since he's killed everyone in a square mile's radius, Jack finds himself once again all alone. He returns to the aforementioned public park looking area and sits down against a wall to breathe. As he does, his entire life flashes before his eyes, including brief glimpses about his true past. Quote, an ugly tile room and chair, restraints, a wall of photographs, surgery, 16mm film, electroshock. But the Adam's high has worn off, and he collapses from all the stress his body's been put through. As he sleeps, a duo of mysterious figures approach. Oh look, Mr. Bubbles, it's an angel. It's a little sister, accompanied by her big daddy, but they quickly notice that Jack is still alive and leave him be. Jack then soon wakes up, and noticing that he's in rough shape, he begins to look for medical attention and medical supplies. He sees a sign for the nearby medical pavilion and heads in that direction. In the background, one of Andrew Ryan's propaganda PAs play over the radio. It almost seems like it's directly mocking Jack. Even though he's come off the Adam's high, he's desperately craving his second dose. He scavenges through every corpse he sees, only finding a couple of bullets. He ends up breaking into a gatherer's garden for yet another fix, but he keeps coming up empty. After a minute, it's revealed that, yep, Ryan was indeed directly addressing Jack. Sad to see you so desperate. I expected more from you, Jack. Of course, Jack is extremely confused. Above all, how does Ryan know his name? He puts that aside for now, and he comes upon the office of Dr. Steinman. Thankfully, he's actually still alive. In fact, he's in the midst of performing surgery, but Jack isn't really deterred by that. He walks up and asks for some first aid and directions to Neptune's bounty. Steinman tries to get Jack to stay, offering to make him perfect, and even offering to sew on a new ear, but eventually gives up at the mention of Atlas. As Jack leaves, he looks over his shoulder and sees a line of corpses hanging from the ceiling, all former patients of Dr. Steinman. Rightfully creeped the fuck out, he books it out of there. Jack keeps moving, eventually making his way through some sort of nursery, where he comes across the grisly sight of a little sister gathering Adam from a corpse. He's not the only one who noticed, though, as a splicer who's described as looking like a troglodyte, which is hilarious in my opinion, slowly approaches. Just before he can lunge, the little sister screams, to which her Big Daddy swiftly comes to the rescue. Specifically, a bouncer Big Daddy. He spins up his drill, turning the splicer into a fine red goop. Of course, Jack is completely bewildered at this sight, but once the coast is clear, he begins rummaging through whatever is left of the freshly killed splicer. The only thing he finds, however, is a bag of potato chips. Because you're never alone in Rapture, of course, another mysterious figure approaches Jack as he tries to eat. Except this one seems somewhat sane and polite. At first glance, at least, he is, and his name is Rudy. Rudy Pendergast, dressed in a theater usher's outfit and speaks in a Bronx accent. Essentially, a minor discretion is about this character in particular. Do you want to know what Rudy's character is like? Imagine Stanley Poole with none of the charm or irony to his character. He's just an asshole, to be quite blunt. Anyways, long story short, Rudy begs for the chips, and Jack ends up giving him the whole bag, in exchange for information, and an escort to Neptune's bounty. Rudy has a shortcut. Of course, the normal route is blocked by a couple of security turrets, obviously by Andrew Ryan. So, he opens up a hole in the wall, which leads to Rapture's internal underbelly. As they walk, they talk, and we get a ton of exposition. The Big Daddy is explained to us, along with the little sisters, and how they were both created by Tenenbaum, Rapture's finest, and Dr. Suchong as well. He talks at length about the feud between Atlas and Ryan. In short, Atlas started smuggling. Ryan got pissed, so Atlas ended up becoming a revolutionary, hence Rapture's Civil War. As Jack and Rudy split up after this information is explained to us, the viewers, Jack doesn't really have much time to take in all this information and think, as he catches sight of a random little sister, her Big Daddy nowhere in sight. She's just drawing on the sidewalk with chalk. Jack cautiously approaches. There's actually an extremely sweet and wholesome moment here. They talk about the flower she's drawing, and she explains she's never actually seen one in person. Jack mentions that he has, and describes a few of them. Then, the little sister says that she doesn't actually remember her own name, so she's nicknamed Flower. "Flower, where do you live?" Jack asks. She responds with the doctor. "She takes care of us. She could take care of you too." Jack meekly responds, "That's nice." But Flower continues, "I don't have a big brother. You could be my big brother." After being away for a bit, Rudy comes back with a mallet. To ruin this moment in its entirety, he just bashes Flower's head in. He begins collecting Adam from the corpse, to which a nearby Big Daddy finally catches wind of what happened. In an act of heroism unparalleled, he grabs Rudy by the leg and begins slamming him repeatedly into a wall until there's nothing left of him but a red stain. Both the bouncer and Jack take a minute to mourn Flower. The Big Daddy lets out a hellish wail. Not content in just killing Rudy, however, the bouncer then decides to take his aggression out on Jack as well, just literally picking him up and throwing him through a wall. This then obviously leads to a fight, Jack unloading literally every single bullet he has into the Big Daddy, to no effect. There's a chase throughout every location we've seen so far, through the neighborhood, the ballroom, the tunnels underneath Rapture, all the way back to the medical pavilion. Jack only wins in this encounter because of the aforementioned guard turrets, which proceed to turn the Big Daddy's armor plating into Swiss cheese. Looking for a place to rest, Jack once again returns to the faux neighborhood, in search of a comfy bed for the night. He just picks a random house and barges in, to which he finds his house, like a perfect facsimile of his own home, or at least his living room. Instead of a spare bedroom or something, the next room over is actually some sort of lab, the one he grew up in. We get a good look at everything that made up his mental conditioning, including a picture of the random people that represented his mom and his dad on the surface. Just like the game, these were all artificial memories. Jack, as anyone would, struggles to process all of this information and eventually has a full-on breakdown. Cue the return of Atlas. He mostly just brushes Jack's concerns aside, but there is one thing he makes note of, and it's that Jack told Steinman Atlas's name. If Steinman knows what his line of thinking is, then Andrew Ryan knows too. So Atlas basically grabs Jack and yanks him along. They make a mad dash towards Neptune's bounty, but they're just too late. As they arrive, the submarine bay explodes. Atlas has to watch his actual, real wife and kid slowly sink into the black depths of the ocean, slowly asphyxiating before the ocean's pressure crushes the sub, a sight that causes Atlas to drop to his knees and beginning to sob. With his last breaths, he gives Jack one last request. Find him. He'll answer your questions, referring to Andrew Ryan. And when he does, would you kindly kill the son of a bitch? As Jack is about to leave, he looks over his shoulder. The submarine bay is flooding, and it looks like Atlas is going to let himself drown. Consumed by the very same ocean that took his family, and wanting to honor what he considers his soul friend's last request, and also desperately wanting to find answers about, whatever the fuck's going on, Jack then heads up to Ryan's office. In the script, it's not actually that hard. He doesn't need to generate a sympathetic overload in harmonic core number 3 or anything like that. He kind of just waltzes over to Ryan's penthouse in Olympus Heights, to which we find Andrew Ryan, completely true to form, ambiently putting golf balls across his carpet. Over a fine glass of alcohol, he explains everything. They took away my ultimate creation and brought back a slave. Jack insists that he isn't, that he has free will, but finds himself hopelessly obeying "would you kindly." Every event up until now is finally put into perspective. He's always been Atlas's unwilling pawn, blindly obeying whatever was asked for him. We get a quick flashback to the plane, and it's revealed that his mother's present was in fact a pistol, and the note contained instructions to kill the pilot as they reached over certain coordinates. Ryan asks for Jack to simply end it, to pick up that golf club and, well, I'm sure you guys know the rest, to which he unwillingly complies. As Jack mourns over the corpse of his freshly slain father, it turns out that Atlas didn't die after all. What a surprise! His voice comes over a speaker, congratulating us, going on a grand monologue about the events that happened up until this point. During his speech, he also reveals that Jack's true mother was the baby carriage splicer all the way back at the beginning of the script. With everything that's happened so far, Jack is filled with despair. He feels lost, hopeless, and a real sense of, what do I do now? He even grabs a pistol and nearly ends his own life, but he's brought right back to Earth by a little sister, gently grabbing his hand, which sounds very wholesome. Leading him down a corridor into Tenenbaum's safe house, Jack just can't take it anymore. He collapses on the actual good doctor's floor for a little bit. When he wakes up, he's strapped to a surgery table with a new wound on his forehead. It turns out, instead of any form of mental conditioning, Would You Kindly was a literal mechanical device implanted in his head that forced him to obey every Would You Kindly command. For obvious reasons, Jack is, hesitant to exactly trust Tenenbaum. Rightfully so. As far as he knows, she's just the person who made the Little Sisters what they are. Anyways, she's given Jack a very valuable gift, that being free will. The ability to make his own choices. They talk, and Tenenbaum ruminates on her own past choices. She explains the discovery of Adam and how guilty she feels for what she's done. As they talk, they walk next door into a Big Daddy workshop. She explains how she created the Big Daddies to protect the Little Sisters, in hopes that one day she could eventually find a cure for what she's done to them. Unfortunately, she hasn't had much luck, and things are looking quite dire too. There's a grand total of 6 little sisters left. Atlas has been rounding up and harvesting Adam from everyone that he can get his hands on. He's become powerful beyond imagination, with enough Adam to make everyone else kneel before him. Tenenbaum shows off some emergency escape pods and gives Jack the option to leave, to start over his life on the surface. But she and the little sisters were going to remain in Rapture. He strongly considers just saying, fuck it, as I would too, and leaving. But then he sees a drawing of a flower on the wall, and thinks back to Flower, the little sister from earlier. It gives him the courage he needs to make a very difficult decision. Jack begins splicing heavily, pumping himself with vial after vial of Adam. Where he's gotten them is never explained, unfortunately. He returns to the Big Daddy workshop and puts on a suit, and begins the conversion process of becoming a Big Daddy. And once this is done, Jack's conversion into a bouncer-type Big Daddy is soon complete. With the 6 little sisters by his side, he begins trawling the bowels of Rapture, eventually finding the source of Atlas's power, a sort of torment nexus. See, he didn't kill all the little sisters. Instead, he hooked them up to an Adam draining machine and keeps them alive just to keep producing and harvesting more Adam. So, with his army, he frees all of the captive little sisters. We cut away and return to a floor above and are greeted to the sight of a shitload of Adam flowing into Atlas, described as a, quote, spiderweb of tubes connecting right into the base of his neck. Jack enters the room, and so begins our final battle. Opening with another villain monologue, Atlas taunts Jack for a little bit. Your search is over, Jack. You finally found the place where you belong. Down here with us. Welcome home. To which Jack replies with the one-liner, would you kindly shut the fuck up? Excellent writing. Oh man. Jack spins up his drill and shoves it through Atlas's chest, but he doesn't even flinch. It doesn't hurt him at all. The atoms caused him to basically become a shapeshifter. His arm transforms into a tendril that fires at Jack. They keep fighting, and as they do, Atlas just continues to get more and more distorted. The battle is essentially completely one-sided. I'm free now. I'm the first man who's ever been free. I am Adam. God, this dialogue is something else. Anyway, Jack's on the ropes. Atlas has become rather fond of his fancy new electricity powers, and in one last-ditch attempt, Jack swings for the fences. Not for Atlas, but instead he smashes open a window. It sprays a jet of water that soaks Atlas, and essentially he melts like the Wicked Witch. He doesn't quite die. Instead, he collapses on the floor, to which the group of freed little sisters descend upon him like a pack of vultures, and begin repeatedly stabbing him with their gathering needles. But it's too late for Jack. As the little sisters gather around, his vision goes white. He sees heaven, holding hands with 2 of the little sisters, while his dog Rusty runs around excitedly. Or not. He's once again revived from the brink of death by Tenenbaum, cut out of that wretched Big Daddy suit and returning to his former state, surrounded by his little found family, and if just for a moment, everything is alright. If you like happy endings, however, I suggest you stop listening now. Alright? Still here? Good. While we think all of the Adam has been drained out of Jack, it isn't. In fact, it's turned him completely mad. His arm then transforms into that same tendril that Atlas had during their final battle, and slaughters everyone in sight. For some reason, it's never really explained why he does this. We cut away to the surface, and Jack's taken one of those escape pods, along with an army of splicers, to conquer the world. The scene in the script is his army of splicers raiding a nuclear submarine, and commanding a nuclear missile. And that's it. Well, that was a sudden downer ending, wasn't it? A real slap into the face of all the story's moral themes. It's difficult to tell from just a script and obviously concept art but I think I've made my opinion more than clear. But I'll bite my tongue for this minute, and since it's not really the time or place to give out opinions on what I think the script would be like, or what the movie would be like, etc., 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 you get where I'm going with that. I'm actually thinking about doing a part 2 to this video, discussing my opinions on the script. If you guys are interested in that, let me know down in the comment section below. Even though this film was never released, there's still a ton of fascinating stuff to talk about, and I'm extremely glad that I was able to share this relic with the world. Thank you all so very much for watching. Again, if you want to check out the writer of the script, Zedd, her link will be down in the description below. Please go check her out, that would be very much appreciated. If you're new here and enjoy Bioshock content and want to see more in the future, would you kindly hit that subscribe button, like the video, and hit the bell and turn on all post notifications to never miss a future video or future live stream. Also, if you want to follow me on my social medias or join our Discord server, the links to those will be down in the description below. Thank you all so very much for watching. Take care, stay safe, and I will talk to you all very, very soon.